What's up, Ryan? Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing this morning?
Thank you for having me. I'm good.
I felt I had to return the favor after being on yours. No, I'm just kidding. We've been friends for a while now, and I've really admired what you do. And this is just a way to ask a lot of, well, I ask you a lot of weird questions anyway, but I can ask even more here, and it's not as intrusive. But anyway, for those that don't know who you are and how successful you are and what your business has become, can you give a quick blurb overview on what your business currently is in 2025 and then what your role in the business is?
Yeah, I have an accounting and finance background. I went to school for accounting and finance at a small Christian college. I realized really quickly that I wanted to level up and I didn't want to stay small forever. So that's what made me want to get in and apply at Deloitte Consulting. And I applied at Deloitte 27 times before I finally got an interview and then eventually an offer. So if that tells you anything about how much it meant to me to be able to get in there, it was a pretty life-changing opportunity because now I'm on a pedestal that's the same as people who went to University of Illinois, Iowa, Penn State, Alabama, like these super expensive schools, and I only paid $25,000 for my degree versus some of these people that I work with paid over six figures. So it was a way to kind of level set. And I knew that if I got 4 to 5 years of experience at Deloitte as well as my CPA license, that I could really do anything and I could go anywhere. And it was about 2 years in at Deloitte that I had a conversation with one of the partners on his $3 million rooftop in Chicago. And partners at Deloitte, they are definitely bringing in money. I think the minimum partner in our office was making at least 800 grand a year. I know guys that were making upwards of $2 to $2.5 million. And this guy says, he goes, making partner is great, but my daughter just turned 18 and I've only been to three of her soccer games in her entire life.
Mm.
And I sat and thought about that for a long time. And it's like, yeah, you can make millions of dollars, but at what sacrifice? And it was the day after that day that I actually formed my very first LLC for my CPA firm. And I started moonlighting on the side. And I almost started doing my own version of Shawshank Redemption, where I was planning my escape plan from corporate America. The funny thing somebody pointed out to me about that is the Shawshank Redemption, the main character was an accountant. He was doing everybody's taxes in the prison. So it's a pretty good analogy and parallel to that. So I started moonlighting on the side like most people do and got to the point where I actually made more money on the side than I did at Deloitte.
Mm.
And that was what gave me the confidence to leave. So I left in early January 2022, and I've been full-time entrepreneur ever since. We went from $100,000 in gross revenue to 880 to 1.6 million, and then last year I did over 3 million in revenue, and it was all organic growth for the most part. I did touch a little bit of paid ads, but I wouldn't say more than six figures of spend. But
Hmm.
most of the growth has been through organic social media marketing, direct response marketing, and I've grown the team to 15 employees and $3 million in revenue.
That's awesome, man. And as far as your day to day goes, what are you doing day to day in the business, or what do you see as the best use of your time in the business?
Best use is managing and running the teams, and like I'm still doing a lot of that in terms of there might be a decision that needs to be made about a tax return, or we need to come up with an idea to do how we're going to manage the workload. I do a lot of email writing, emails and storytelling too, so I actually enjoy doing that. I was on my way to a bachelor party last week and I got stuck at the Chicago airport because the line was so long because of spring break. So immediately my mind goes to how can I make an email and how can I make a story out of this to tell to my audience. And the long and short of it was just like I felt hopeless standing in line and about to miss my plane, so does a lot of real estate investors who use the wrong CPA because there's 1,800 other clients at your CPA's firm. They have no time for you.
Mm.
That's why we restrict our clients to a certain amount because we want to make sure that everybody gets 24 to 48-hour responses. Some people call our office and they tell us that it takes 3 to 4 weeks to hear back from their accountants sometimes, if not more. Or their accountant died or they had a heart attack or insert all these things. And so that's kind of what I do on a day to day. I would say is manage the teams, and then I send a lot of emails. I send
Cool.
about 500,000 emails a month or so.
I want to come back to that when we talk about content and marketing. But before that, I'd love to hear from you how you decided to, for those that don't know, and you could comment on this too, like Ryan's become pretty much the household name when it comes to like STR real estate in this pocket, and especially on Facebook. Like if someone in any relevant Airbnb Facebook group says like, "Hey, I need an accountant," or someone help with taxes, there's automatically 20 comments recommending Ryan. So I do want to talk about branding, but before that, I'd love to hear how you decided to niche down in real estate. There's so many different industries out there. We were talking about this a little before we hit record, but how did you decide to niche down in real estate and then decide to double down on it or pick it and
Yeah,
double
my
down?
yeah, my first sort of touch at real estate was I had a really good finance professor in college that was always talking about real estate, and she made the bulk of her money in real estate, basically semi-retired and became a university professor off of real estate. So I always knew there was an angle there. And when I started working as an accountant when I was 19, I was preparing tax returns for a company, and they had this one day I was doing a tax return there was a married couple that was making 200K on a W-2, and then I did another tax return with a single guy who owned 18 apartment buildings in Chicago. He was making almost $400,000 a year in cash flow off of the 18 apartment buildings, and he paid less in taxes than the married couple that made half the amount of money as he did. And so even though he was single and he was in a way higher tax bracket and he made double the amount of money, he still paid less in taxes than the married couple. And so at the end of the day, like I was bringing the returns that I prepared to my boss, who's a CPA, his name was Jim. I'm like, what's going on? Like, I thought I did it wrong, or like I was going to get fired, because how does this one have this much tax and this one have that much tax, and this guy's double the income, right? And he goes, no, 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 it's because he invests in real estate. It's because he invests in real estate and they don't. And I go, oh, okay. So I pretty much spent the last 7, 8 years of my life, in a sense of trying to figure out exactly how real estate investors, investors in general, can pay little to nothing in taxes. And I just kind of fell in love with the game. I mean, I fell in love with the economics of real estate in terms of how, interest rate, Fed funds rates affects price. I fell in love with how supply affects price. I fell in love with the art of the deal, in terms of negotiation. Like I pretty much bought my first house for free. Actually, I got paid to buy it because I put it under contract for 235, knowing or thinking it would appraise for 250. It ends up appraising for 245, and I go to the seller and I say, "Hey, I know I was supposed to give you 235, but will you take 245 and we'll split the difference, and I get $5,000 towards my down payment and closing costs." And so I was buying a $235,000 house with a 3.5% down loan. So my total cost was like $8,000, and I just got $5,000 paid towards the $8,000. And so I only had to come out of pocket for $3,000 on my first deal. And I actually did a cost segregation study on the top unit, and it saved me $6,000 in taxes that first year. So I actually got paid $2,000 to buy my first house. So I fell in love with all this stuff. I fell in love with, like I said, just the tax code, helping real estate investors. I fell in love with the deal making, the structure. It's a pretty generous community for the most part, and kind of just how I ended up and saw myself being a part of.
How'd you first break into it? Like the real estate community? I wouldn't say it's like hard or easy to break into. I feel like if you're good, it's such a strong referral business and word of mouth community that people will share it. But still, you need to do something to get like a foot in the door. Again, like for those listening, I'm not exaggerating at all. When someone posts in one of these groups, 20 people say Ryan's name. So like, I know it didn't start that way, but what were like some of your first moves at the beginning to like sort of penetrate that? Was it try to speak at conferences? Was it try to get people on your podcast? Was it just DMing people, making content, or all the above? But how did you first think about it?
When I first started, I had joined these. I knew I had all the tax knowledge, and I wanted to get that out in the world, because I used to teach Dave Ramsey's financial class in my church before COVID.
Wow.
And so I was 20, 21 years old teaching people who were twice my age personal finance, right? How to manage their money. And so when COVID happened, all that went offline. Our church wasn't sophisticated enough to go over to Zoom. And so I felt this void of like, now I'm not helping people anymore. And that's when I started going on Instagram and posting every day, selfie videos, teaching personal finance. That's when I started jumping on these Facebook groups and like teaching people the tax code. I started jumping in groups, and what I did with the groups was I had this idea in mind of like setting a timer on my phone for 15 minutes a day, just going through all these groups and like answering people's questions. So it would always be like I would answer somebody's question, and I would never. The problem that a lot of people make is they'll answer a question and they'll leave their phone number or they'll leave a link to their website. And people don't like that. People don't like feeling like they're being sold to because, my mom used to say that anything before the word but is probably bullshit. Like if you say this whole sentence, like two sentences, and then you say the word but, like all that was bullshit. Just say that last sentence. So if you're gonna, leave a nice paragraph and then leave your phone number and email, the average person sees that and goes, "Oh, this person's just probably trying to sell me something," right? But if you
Mm.
leave a paragraph of value and don't ask for anything in return, which is the most important part, people are going to naturally want to repay the favor. And it's just every single time that you answer a question, you're depositing into that bank of goodwill, and it's building up and building up. And if you build up the bank of goodwill high enough, you never have to ask for money because people will just naturally want to repay the favor. And it got to the point where somebody would post a question in there, somebody would tag me and say, "I don't know the answer, but this guy Ryan does." And it just got to the point where like people just knew me on a first name basis to be able to ask or answer anything about taxes, finances, real estate transactions.
Got it.
Yeah.
And through that, it just started to grow. Love to talk about content strategy now because I feel like you're clearly a talented like accountant and strategist, but just from our conversations, your marketing mind is unbelievably impressive. So, first question I guess I'm always curious about with people is how they go about implementing like content in the sense of when you first started it, and maybe your view is the same now or maybe it's different, is did you jump in and say, "Okay, I need a coach, I need to hire an agency, I can learn this myself, all the three," and then I'm curious if you feel like that's the same now as far as going with learning it yourself, either like free coach groups or agency or employees or contractors that just come in and do the stuff for you, because again, like you really have become like amazing at it, not just blowing smoke. Like it's cool to watch from a distance. So just always curious people's process on that.
Yeah, and I guess in terms of actual filming, I'm what's known as a batcher. So I'll take one day out of the month and I'll film 5 to 6 hours worth of content. I'll change
Hmm.
shirts and everything and act like that never happened, and then you'll never see me again for the rest of the month. Now I do some content through the weeks, whether if I'm doing like a webinar or like a free live training, or if I'm doing a like I have weekly calls from my communities, so I'll do a call there and get some content out of it. I'm a really big fan of like double dipping in terms of like I'm serving my community and my clients, but I'm also like recording that stuff too, so then I can use that as content, and it's real and authentic information that I'm giving to people. And some people like those posts. The problem with content is the clickbaity stuff that you script and you record is going to get way more pops than me actually giving real life advice to somebody on a call. And it just always works like that because it follows persuasion, and it follows old psychology behind like why people's brains stop the scroll. When you talk about like scroll stopping, like what actually gets people to scroll stop. I remember like Ryan Pineda used to do these stupid videos in a hard hat and like a construction suit. I don't know if you ever remembered
I remember this
that.
vividly.
Yeah. Why? Well, they're different. It's a pattern interrupt. You're scrolling on your feed and everybody's doing the same thing, and then next thing you know, you see the guy in a cone head. Like why? Well, it's to stop the scroll. And so if you want to master views and learn how to get attention, you have to understand like why people stop and psychology. And it always starts with like some sort of attention grabber, right? So when you're watching TV, how many times have you seen a commercial that says attention? If you're 65 and over and you have mesothelioma, you're entitled to compensation, or the asbestos commercials. So 99% of the people in this world, when they watch that commercial, they're probably going to turn it off or walk into the other room. But if you're 65 and over and you have mesothelioma, you're probably going to stop and pay attention, right? And it's no different. I mean, that's why the biggest text on a billboard is always the attention grabber. It's always the call out. So like the very first part of the video or the post or the website, like you want to be calling out exactly who you want to work with, because what that also does is tell you people who you don't work with, which is also equally important. But we'll call that a hook, right? So that's like an attention grabber or a hook. People understand what a hook is, but they also get it wrong in the sense of that a hook isn't just to grab attention. What a really good hook does is make your audience ask as many questions as possible in their mind so that they keep watching the page or they keep watching the video or they keep scrolling down, right? So a hook in my space might be, hey, did you know the average fix and flipper overpays on taxes by $18,000 a year? Then that if you're a fix and flipper, you're probably watching that saying, am I overpaying in taxes by $18,000 a year?
Sure.
Right?
Uh-huh.
You want to get as many questions that pop into the person's mind as possible when they see that hook, when they see that headline. I was helping a friend of mine. She's a multilingual speech pathologist for kids, Russian kids coming to the United States to learn English and learn how to read and write, right? And I'm trying to work on her website, trying to come up with ideas to help her market. I know nothing about this space. And then all of a sudden she drops this bomb on me. She goes, yeah, one of the problems is that 27% of kids who are multilingual get misdiagnosed with ADHD, ADD, or dyslexia. So they get diagnosed with a real life disorder that doctors think that they have, even though they don't. It's just their reading and writing comprehension isn't up to what it should be because they're multilingual and they came from a different country, right? I'm like, got it. Here it is. Like, right? Multilingual parents, right? Attention multilingual parents who recently got diagnosed with one of these disorders. Did you know that? So, right? So if you're a parent of a kid that's multilingual, you're watching and you're listening because you don't want that to happen to your kid. And
sure.
and if you're the parent of a multilingual kid who already has a disorder, you're asking, well, did that happen to my kid? Right? So you're in marketing, like you can either appeal to one's self-interest, or in that case, it's even better because you're appealing to the self-interest of other people. So it's not the kid obviously that's reading the page; it's mom that's reading the page for the kid, and so it kind of enacts this other trigger in us because moms always want to put their kids first, right? So there's some other principles and philosophies there, but that's in a nutshell. A good web page is going to have a headline, a subheadline. It's going to have some sort of claim to fame or social proof, and then it's going to have a call to action. Book a call or sign up now or whatever your call to action is.
I love it, man. That's super powerful. On I guess where I'm also curious is even how you picked up these skills. Like again, there's people listening to this that are like, huh, do I hire an employee that used to work as a social media manager at a company? Do I hire like a coach, like buy into a mastermind? Or do I work with an agency that they're going to give me the scripts and the guidance of what to say and what to do, and then maybe I can learn it myself? Like, what route did you start with? And then, like, even for yourself today, do you work with any people like that as far as helping you? Or is it really just your sort of like gut creative direction that you know what you know?
Yeah, I learned a lot of this because I lost a lot of money in terms of missed sales or missed deals. So in 2022, just to give you like perspective on this, in 2022 we took like 640 something sales calls, and we closed out of those 640 something, we closed like 100 plus. We were closing maybe like 13, 14%.
Mm-hmm.
And I had calculated that had I knew sales and marketing better and like persuasion or what I'm teaching, I would have closed 25% instead of 13%. So I would have made an extra, let's see, 12% of 600 is 65, call it 70. I would have made an extra $400,000 in 2022 had I have known how to market and sell better. So it costed me $400,000 not to know that. And that was probably the biggest price that I've ever paid in terms of that was lost revenue for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I vowed that I was never going to let that happen again. And so in 2023 and then pretty much all of 2024, like that's when I signed up I just went down the digital marketing rabbit hole. Like I would attend like these 1 or 2 day events in person, read most of the books. And I'll never forget this. I had one of my mentors told me, he goes, look, if you really want to learn something, you got to go straight to the top. You got to go straight to the source. So like one of my mentors, he kept saying like, yeah, this guy Perry does like really good emails and teaches me how to write emails. So you really need to learn from this guy. Okay, great. Well, he doesn't have anything out there online for somebody like me. It's all inside of his masterminds and communities. So I went straight to the top with that. And one of the masterminds that I'm in is $30,000 a year. One of the marketing and sales mastermind. And then I think it's worth every single penny. Because once I dropped that 30 grand, I doubled my business. I went from 1.6 million in revenue to 3 million in revenue. So a lot of people ask me, like, was it worth it? I think absolutely it was worth it. Because also, too, what a lot of people don't understand is that the skills that you learn, you can't unlearn them. And also the government cannot tax them until you have some sort of realized income. So if I invest $30,000 to basically never make less than $1 million ever again in my life, like the government can't tax that's in my head. They can only tax what's on paper. So if I might be making $1 million, but I'm also offsetting it by like a lot of real estate losses, and I'm putting the money back into the business. So like I'm not really actually paying taxes on that. Like
Mm-hmm.
the government can't tax what's not earned, and everything that's in your head is all unrealized gains. Because now I have the power to basically, never make less than $1 million a year, because I went through that marketing and sales mastermind. That's the way that I see things too. Or, last year I did the math. I spent over $200,000 on marketing, which came out to be still, uh, you know, N% of my total revenue. But that $200,000 I spent on marketing that goes to building my personal brand, that doesn't get taxed until the personal brand turns into cash in terms of
Mm-hmm.
sales, right? And so that's just the way that I see business now. Is it really is like a game, and it's a tax game. It's how to leverage your time and money game. It's more than anything else, it's understanding sales and marketing.
Of that 200,000, what's the breakdown of spend for that? Is it agencies? Is that ads? Is that coaches? Like, I don't know if you know it offhand or even just rough numbers, ballpark.
200 was everything. It was agencies, ads, pretty much anything with marketing stamp on it.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah.
Is the plan in 25, and I know you just made an acquisition that maybe you could touch on there. Like, as far as 2025, is the plan to keep doing what you're doing as far as like marketing, advertising, like team members, or to change directions, or to like do a lot more of what you're doing?
Yeah, I sort of had this realization that, and we were talking about this a little bit, but I think where I'm at organically, I feel like a lot of it's slowed down, and there's just a lot more players um, in it now, to where it's very similar to like cabins in the Smoky Mountains, right? So the people that were the front runners in 2018, 2019, like they were making a killing in terms of it was always rented, it was super good rates. Yeah, I mean, even during COVID, it was super good rates, and they went up a lot in value. But then the market sort of got saturated, right? And everybody's got a cabin. Matter of fact, everybody's got a 4-bedroom cabin with a pool inside of it, right? So how does yours stand out from the other person? Well, most of the time it's not, and it's a race to the bottom in terms of competing on price. And my history teacher used to say, if everyone's a millionaire, no one's a millionaire. And so I think just like the competition got, like, not that I'm scared of the competition, but it just got a lot. It just got to be a lot more in terms of how many people were doing exactly what I was doing, and but they were just charging a lot less, like a third of what I was charging. And not that I'm overpriced or not that I'm out to get people, because I really do think that I'm worth my weight in gold in terms of what I charge. But the organic side just got hard, and then I realized that, I was doing the math, and I was like, well, in order for me to double my business, to go from 3 million to 6 million, I know exactly how much it's going to cost. It's going to require, because in order to do that, I need to sign on 300 people at $10,000 minimum each, right? To go from 3 million to 6 million. So in order to sign on 300 people, and we're only closing one out of every 8 or 9 cold leads, right, at a $10,000 price point. Well, I'm gonna have to take 3,000 sales calls, right? How much does that cost? Cost 400 grand to fill the pipe with 3,000 calls, and that's just the people that show up, because there's gonna be 3,500 people that book calls, and only 3,000 of them are gonna show up, because cold traffic, not everybody shows up, right? We typically have like a 78%, 75 to 78% show rate on cold. Not everybody shows up, right? Well, what about salespeople? They got to make money too. So that's going to be another like 150, probably like $150,000 in commissions. So we're already at close to $600,000 to double my business, and we didn't even talk about the amount of time that it takes, because we're talking about having to do 3,000 sales calls. If the average salesperson does five calls a day, 20 days a month, right? Well, they're doing 100 calls a month. It would take one person 2.5 years. It would take 2 people 1.5 years. It would take 3 people 1 year. Like, it would take so long to do that, versus I just bought a $3 million firm, and it took me like a couple months to do the whole deal. And so I immediately double everything. I doubled revenue. I doubled employee size. I didn't double employee size. I doubled revenue. I doubled client size. I added on 3 to 4 CPAs, like qualified talent. And that's another thing too. So I mentioned ads would be like 400 grand. Sales would be another couple hundred. We got to hire people to do the marketing for that. And I would have had to have doubled my team size. I would have had to have hired more people. So when it was all said and done, I did the math, and it would cost me like $1.1 million, and it would take me a year and a half to double, versus I just bought a firm and did it in one day, essentially.
So, wow, yeah, okay, there's a lot to dig in there. So, I guess with that though, is it acquire a new business and double down on the marketing that you're doing? Or do you think you'll need different marketing channels? Like, is the plan to just acquire this business and then sort of put your like marketing arm, attach it to it, and then it should function? Or is the focus more like, all right, we're going to focus on improving that business and simplifying it first, and then later on we'll get to marketing? Or is it sort of just all at one time?
I mean, of course, my brain always goes right to the marketing and like the cross-selling of the existing clients, and like how much money can I extrapolate out of that. But especially when you buy a business, like it takes you a while to like gain trust with those people. And so I think it's like a 5 to 6 month trust building process and a ramping up before I'm able to cross-sell to those people. I've been following a lot of what private equity is doing, and they're basically just buying these small, very similar sized firms to the ones that I bought. They're just buying these firms and just hammering them over the head with like annuity products, insurance salesmen, LLC people, like, and they don't want anything to do with it. And it's because they haven't been provided any value first. The private equity bought the firm, trying to pitch all these people on sales calls. It doesn't work like that. You gotta provide value. You gotta ask for anything without you gotta give value without asking for anything in return. So I think it's a 5 to 6 month sort of ramp up process before I'm able to cross sell, but time will tell on that. But when you talk about like, you know, improving the firm's operations, I sometimes take for granted the operations that I built at my first firm because of how like smooth and how processed and detailed they are compared to the firm that I acquired. And I associate with this little analogy because sometimes your employees or people are so in the weeds of what they're doing that they never take a step back to think like, how did I end up here in the first place? And like, is the way of the process that we're doing this the right way to do it or not? And employees, the worst part is like, there's employees that can't do that. Now there's some employees that say, okay, we need to do it differently. Great. There's some employees that they'll never be the one to raise their hand and say that we should do it differently. It's almost like a fly. So you ever like in the summertime, you get a fly that like crawls in your window, this small little crack, the smallest crack ever, he gets in, right? And then what does he do? He flies up to the top of the window, he buzzes, he annoys the hell out of you, and then you're trying to kill him, you're trying to swat him, right? And like this goes on for 20 minutes before you kill the fly. He's flying around the room, everything. Well, if the fly would have just stepped back and thought to himself, how I got in here is probably how I can get out of here. And if I would just crawl through the tiny little crack that I came in, I'd be free. Well, the problem is flies don't have any memory at all. So they forget the crack that they came in from. And that's also, not to compare employees to flies, but it's how some people think. And I'm not the first one to say it. Albert Einstein said it too. Albert Einstein says the conscious mind that creates the problem cannot be the one to solve it. So whatever thought process or pattern that you came into the problem with, it cannot be the one to solve it because it's the mind that got you into the mess in the first place. It's just like the people that they DIY their bookkeeping and then they come to you and say, "Oh no, I think I could do it myself." It's like, well, no, you messed up because the mind that created the problem cannot be the one to solve it. So like you probably should hire that out. Or people pay $800 for a CPA for 3 business returns in their personal return, and they wonder why they got audited. Well, you just paid $800 for 4 tax returns. We would have charged like $5,000 for the same amount. I don't even know if the CPA even looked at your tax returns for $800. I know I wouldn't. He probably just loaded everything up in the computer and hit sign. Like there's no quality of work, I guarantee it, for $800. No way, absolutely not. But you wonder why people wonder why they end up in the same spot. It's because the mind that created the problem cannot be the one to solve it. All we all are just flies walking into a house, crawling into a house, and we can't get out, and we wonder why.
So good. Dude, I feel like we could go on for a few hours here. Just for the sake of time, man, what's the best way for people to check you out, get in touch, learn about what you're doing, and follow the journey in 25?
Yeah, all social media is just Ryan Bakke CPA, my first name, last name CPA. And then my Facebook group is Tax Strategies for Real Estate Investors with Ryan Bakke CPA. We got over 12,000 people in that community on Facebook.
Damn. We might definitely need a part 2. I can't believe we didn't get to so many things, but you just dropped a lot of nuggets on the stuff we did. So anyway, appreciate you coming on, Ryan. Always fun catching up, and look forward to see what you take on in 25 and how you position that new firm that you picked up, which is really awesome.
Yeah.
So thanks
Awesome.
again, man.
Yeah, no problem.